Hi there everyone, today I'm reviewing Surrounded by Setbacks by Thomas Eriksen. So Eriksen is the best-selling author of this book here, Surrounded by Idiots. And he's released a set of books that all feature the Surrounded by moniker. So they sit somewhere between self-help book, popular science book, and in this one, Surrounded by Setbacks, the book aims to provide guidance on how to deal with life when many setbacks occur. So the principal USP of this book as a self-help book is that it uses the DISC assessment. And I think an issue of the DISC assessment here is that the book doesn't really utilise it enough when that's kind of the USP over other self-help or popular science books that it has. The DISC assessment divides behaviour of humans into 4 colours or categories: dominance, influence, stability, and compliance. Also known as colours: red, yellow, green, and blue. So a person's tendencies in behaviour will go towards 2 or even 3 of these usually. And they tend to reveal how a person will act in a given situation. So, for example, if you're green, then you tend to focus on complying with rules. So if a boss at work tells a green to do something, the green person is, or sort of compliance person is likely to do the instructions as closely as possible. As they really want to stick to the letter of the law. However, if you're a red person, then you might actually contest the request and say, well, what about doing this? Or couldn't this be better? Because they skew towards dominance. So in the same situation, these 2 colours will tend to act differently. So this model is certainly interesting, and one table in the book runs through the approach, manner, work pace, wants, and what they kind of want to be of these different colours. So if you're green, what you want to kind of achieve in life is going to be different to a red, for example. And the idea is here that you can understand your kind of dominant colour and how you will likely react to setbacks. And then that's kind of the theme for the book, I guess. But I would say that really there wasn't adequate time devoted to understanding where you kind of fit in the DISC model. It just kind of gives a table with, well, which of these would you prefer? But the issue with this is that, as far as I could tell, I had parts of 3 of them. So, which of those 3 colours am I really? And it's quite subjective. So say you were given 20 questions, maybe you sort of are dominant for like 5 across 3 of them, and then there's sort of 5 more questions where you're kind of like not really sure. So you almost seem like an equal split, and then you're not really certain on 5 of the questions, but you've got 5 I'm green, 5 I'm blue, 5 I'm yellow. So how do you kind of deal with that situation? The book never really tells you. And it's not really covered how to filter it down narrowly and actually implement this DISC model for yourself, which I guess is kind of the point of the book, right? As a self-help book, and it's using this behavioural psychology to assess how you will act and what you should focus on. So this system was found in this book as well, Surrounded by Idiots, which is kind of Eriksen's breakthrough book, I guess you could call it. But in Surrounded by Setbacks, I don't really understand why it was only introduced around a quarter of the way in, when really that's the main reason that you're reading it, right? And the detriment of doing that is there's a lot of kind of waffle for about a quarter of the book, to be honest. It's pretty much just saying things that you already know. Especially if you've already read a few self-help books and you're just trying to look to some self-improvement, as I know a lot of people reading this genre will tend to just keep going through them because they're trying to find sort of confirmation, but often you end up a bit disappointed because most of it you already know deep down, really. And so I think the model needed to be better integrated through the book from the outset. How I think it should have gone is, here's the DISC model. How do you apply it to yourself? Go through that. Go through the kind of snags of, okay, I seem to fit into several of them. How do I distinguish, or how do I narrow it down so that, okay, usually I'm a red or whatever. And then how to work from it based upon your own tendencies in response to setbacks. So then obviously it can apply to setbacks. And to be fair, the portion of the book that kind of did this, where it gave examples of people and how they acted, was a bit better at integrating the DISC model in a way, but I don't know, it just seemed a bit sort of just tacked on, really. So at the risk of sounding too critical, it's worth mentioning that the book is certainly right in many of its observations. There are things you can or can't control, obviously, but you can control your responsibilities, or even how you interpret and accept those things that you can't control. And there is also a responsibility for the things that you could do but you don't. And Eriksen kind of makes the argument that you need to actually take responsibility for those where you kind of go, oh, I could go and exercise, but I'm not going to bother. So that you are actually dropping a responsibility by not going. But you can kind of see what I mean. This isn't exactly a sophisticated idea. Like, you might not have thought of it maybe recently in those kind of clear terms, and maybe that's kind of the point of getting a book like this. But I mean, most of that was framed by the Stoics, for example, thousands of years ago. So it's nothing really new. The book even states that the main problem with self-help books like this is that when it comes to setbacks, they tend to fall into two schools of thought. Either you need to kind of get your act together and take responsibility where you can, or you actually might be a bit burnt out. It might be too much the other way, where you kind of need to look after yourself and not be overly self-critical. And this book, Surrounded by Setbacks, falls into the former camp. And to be honest, I was a little disappointed it didn't try to kind of reconcile these two, or kind of make an argument, well, actually, you kind of need to identify, are you just not taking responsibility, or is there genuinely just too much going on and you're sort of overwhelmed because you're trying to sort it all out? It kind of just sits in the former camps, and the author even talks about this. So I thought, well, why don't you think of like a more unique approach and use that? So that was a bit disappointing, despite him being clearly aware of both approaches, and I think he's right in that assessment. Some of the practical steps, and this is a phenomenon always present in self-help books, are kind of what you might expect as well here. Meditate, take time away, work harder, write down your setbacks, write down your successes. Not all of those were present, but I'm just illustrating what was here. As a lot of the writing down ones were, and there's nothing wrong with any of these, but it's nothing new. The advice generally is solid, but you will sometimes roll your eyes for the 10th time at being told that you need to do this and that. So, like I said before, what if someone truly just does have a lot of stuff going on that they actually have no influence over? Like if a lot of, family members are ill, say. It doesn't really provide adequate answers for this, I don't think. It sort of just says, well, just take responsibility for what you can, and but it doesn't deal with edge cases. So what if there is someone who just seems to take responsibility more than anyone around them, and they're on it and they're like, oh, I'm still overwhelmed. So what about that? Or what if you seem to fit into all four areas of the DISC model? And this book, to be fair, does sort of make the caveat that it says, I don't claim to have all the answers, but I think it could have gone a bit further than it does. I mean, a lot of it is quite repetitive. And the problem with this repetition is that you've probably heard it already. So, like I said, when it keeps telling you, well, you're probably not doing enough, it gets a bit tedious. So in terms of final score for Surrounded by Setbacks, it does provide some good analysis about setbacks. It does kind of provide good advice, to be honest. But there is little new here. It's quite repetitive, and it does get tedious in probably several places. Maybe I would even say many places, maybe. And it doesn't utilize the DISC model as well as it could, which is perhaps its biggest flaw, because when that is touted as like the main reason to get this, well, look, we're going to apply this behavioural psychology to this problem, and here's the book to do it, here's the answer. Well, and it kind of does a pretty bad job of doing that, to be honest. I think it could have been done way better. Then, it's sort of just introduced and kind of like, figure it out, go away and figure it out now. We've given you the DISC model. So it's definitely a missed opportunity, I think, because Eriksen does have good advice and ideas, and I think he genuinely sounds like someone you could learn from, but it could have been implemented more effectively. So it's a little bit disappointing. And to be honest, I think it's one that could be skipped. So I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10. It's a little bit below average. It kind of doesn't add much that's new, and it missed important things that I think it needed to consider. And I'll probably review Surrounded by Idiots as well. I don't know why I did it in this order, but we are where we're at. So thanks for watching. Like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.